Good morning, church. We're so glad you're joining us online for Crossroads Online.
Yes.
Right? This is the pre-show. We're here to let you know what's coming up, let you know what today's going to look like, as well as I think we got a sneak peek of some stuff coming up that
We do.
I'm excited about. I think they're going to be excited about as well.
Yep. One of the first things we want to remind you, though, start right out of the beginning. We usually leave this for the end, but if you need to go and get communion ready, now is a good time, other than missing the previews that we just hyped up really, really well.
Yeah.
But we do want you to have that
One of
communion
you go
time
get
ready.
it, the other one take notes.
That's right. But we want you to have communion ready. That way, when we get to that moment, it's not something you're scrambling to get, but it's something you can be present for at the end of Matt's message. So.
Also, remind you that you can give online. You know, we continue every week. We can use offering as a part of our worship and to give back. And there are many ways you can do that. You can drop it off by the church. You can give online at makingcrossroads.com/give. You can use the Church Center app. We want to make that as easy as possible for us to worship in that way this morning.
Yep. Here's some of those things we hyped up a little bit. There are some things that we're planning. We are in the process of getting ready for some kids like events, like Sunday morning kids stuff. And we're going to be announcing when that will start, so you can mark your calendars and be ready for that event. So Sunday morning things. We'll also maybe have some dates for Sunday evenings for kids things, so that's available to you.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of the plan for you, right? With kids ministry is
Right.
to launch Sunday morning and then give it a couple weeks before you jump into Sunday night.
Yeah, that's the plan.
But for students, for middle school, high school students, ours is kind of the opposite. When Adam starts Sunday morning stuff, we're going to start Sunday night student ministry. And we're looking at a couple different options of how that's going to look. But once school's rolling, I think kind of beginning of September is when we're hoping to really jump into that kind of our normal time to launch
Right.
fall programming, to jump into Sunday nights with student ministry. And so I'm excited. I have missed hanging out with my middle school and high school students. I've missed just the randomness and just fun and laughter, but also just kind of the deep questions we get through our small group time and discussions. And I'm pumped for that time to get here and for us to get to that point where we can say, we think we can do this safely and wisely, and it's exciting, right?
Yeah, it is. So we're really looking forward to that. Another thing that is coming up is life groups. We're going to announce and pushing for life groups if they're comfortable to begin meeting again, having questions available for discussion and to just find a time that works best for everyone in that group to meet. We also want people that are newer and maybe interested in this church or connecting on a deeper level to consider a life group and joining one whenever we get to that place where we're open.
Yeah, we really want everyone to be able to be a part of life group. And so I think there's going to be some of those that are like, yeah, we're ready to meet in person. There's going to be some of us that say, we're not quite ready for that. So there's going to be some groups, they just meet over Zoom each week.
Sure.
They meet digitally and they're able to still walk through some of the questions that we're all trying to figure out together.
Yeah.
And so that's coming. We'll have more details of that coming up in the next few weeks.
This is our last week of the Rhythm series that we've been going through, and I was surprised at the message from last week, but we know that the last one for this week is on rest, and so we're glad you're here joining us from the comfort of your recliner. We hope that you're not too comfortable and joining into rest. Yeah, we don't want you jumping into that yet, but Matt's going to have a great message as we wrap up this series, but we have a new one coming up next week. Do you want to tell them what it is?
Yeah, next week we're starting a new series called Redeem the Screen, and it's kind of ironic that you're watching online on a screen and you're already doing a little bit, but I work with a lot of parents and families that, man, screen time is a battle. It's a battle in my house, right? Between, even for me as an adult, I find myself sucked into my screen or my phone or the TV. And so we're going to spend a few weeks, I think 3 weeks, just looking at how do we redeem that? How do we take something that we've abused in a lot of ways or maybe misused in a lot of ways? And how do we allow God to take that and redeem it and to use it for good? Yeah,
it's gonna be awesome. And with the abundance of screen time that everyone has had, we could probably use some refresher on how we can use this in a good, positive, kingdom way. And so I'm excited for this one. Yeah. One final thing before we jump up into that big room, we still have a lot of these baby bottles for this fundraiser for Ray of Hope. And so we want to encourage you, even if it's during the week sometime, and you want to swing by the church and pick one up, they're right there in the foyer. You have to take 10 steps to get into the building and maybe 10 out. And those are tiny steps. But we want to encourage you to come in and get one of those and join with that ministry that we partner with.
Listen, we are so glad you're joining with us today. We're so glad that you're watching online, whether it be on your phone or on YouTube. However it is you're joining us, we're thankful you're here. And so let us know here in the comments. We'll be interacting kind of down below.
Yep.
And I'm excited to worship this morning.
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
Good morning, Crossroads. Thanks for joining us. Let's sing together. Strength is gone. You're the one Jesus, from wherever you've been. Come broken-hearted, let rescue begin. Come find your mercy, oh sinner, come near. Earth has no sorrow that heaven can't heal. Earth has no sorrow that heaven can't heal. So lay down your burdens, lay down your shame. All who are broken, lift up your face. Oh, wanderer, come home. You're not too far. So lay down your hurt, lay down your heart, come as you are. There's hope for the hopeless and all those who stray. Come sit at the table, come taste the grace. There's rest for the weary, rest that endures. Earth has no sorrow that heaven can cure. So lay down your burdens, lay down your shame. All who are broken, lift up your face. Oh, wanderer, come home. You're not too far. So lay down your hurt, lay down your heart, come as you are, come as you are. Fall in His arms, come as you are. There's joy for the morning, oh sinner, be still. Earth has no sorrow that heaven can't heal. Earth has no sorrow that heaven can't heal. So lay down your burdens, lay down your shame. All who are broken, lift up your face. Oh, wanderer, come home. You're not too far. So lay down your hurt, lay down your heart, come as you are, come as you are, come as you are. How great the chasm that lay between us, how high the mountain I could not climb. In desperation, I turned to heaven and spoke your name into the night. Then through the darkness, your loving kindness tore through the shadows of my soul. The work is finished, the end is written. Jesus Christ, my living hope. Who could imagine so great a mercy? What heart could fathom such boundless sin and bear my shame. The cross has spoken, I am forgiven. The King of Kings calls me his own. Beautiful Savior, I'm yours forever. Jesus Christ, my living hope. Hallelujah, praise the one who set me free. Hallelujah, death has lost its grip on me. You have broken every chain. There's salvation in your name, Jesus Christ, my living hope. Hallelujah, praise the one who set me free. Hallelujah, death has lost its grip on me. You have broken every chain. There's salvation in your name, Jesus Christ, my living hope. Then came the morning that sealed the promise. Your buried body began to breathe out of the silence. The roaring lion declared the grave has no claim on me. Then came the morning that sealed the promise. Your buried body began to breathe out of the silence. The roaring lion declared the grave has no claim on me. Jesus, yours is the victory. Hallelujah, praise the one who set me free. Hallelujah, death has lost its grip on me. You have broken every chain. There's salvation in your name, Jesus Christ, my living hope. Hallelujah, praise the one who set me free. Hallelujah, death has lost its grip on me. You have broken every chain. There's salvation in your name, Jesus Christ, my living hope. Jesus Christ, my living hope. God, you are my living hope.
Jesus, thank you for being our living hope. Thank you for the gift that you gave us by dying on the cross. Thank you for all that you've done for us. God, I pray that you will be with Matt as he delivers us the message. I pray that you will speak to our hearts, change our minds, change our thoughts, God. Help us to remember that you are a living hope. In Jesus' name.
Oh, that's good. Oh, man. Come on.
Good morning, Crossroads Online. I love that you got up this morning to join us in our online platform. It is good to be with you to celebrate Jesus together. As a church, whether it's online or whether it's in person, our vision that connects all of us together is to connect people to Jesus and to love our community. If you're a guest checking things out online for the first time, it's great that you are here with us. We'd love to get to know you. If you want to drop your name in the guest form right above this video, that'd be great. Today, we are wrapping up this rhythm series. We've been talking about the rhythms of Jesus' life and some of the nuances of who he is, not just what he does that everybody kind of notices, but what is it that fuels his life? What is it that fuels him to live the way that he does? And we've looked at scripture, we've looked at prayer, we've looked at silence and fasting. These choices of life, they're not mandates anywhere, but if we're going to be followers of Jesus, then we step into the rhythms that he lives with. All the way through this series, we've talked about how you and I, we live a tempo of life. Like the tempo is just like the normal, everyday beat of life, the beat of the drum that you walk to. And for some of us, it's faster, and some of us, it's slower. If you were to, from 1 to 10, but 1 being the slowest, which means you don't go anywhere, you don't do anything, you don't see anybody, you're just like in your house, no friends, nobody comes over, you don't do anything, you're just in your house breathing. That being 1, all the way to number 10, which is you're constantly on the go, you're never getting things done, you're always late because there's so much in your schedule, and you seem to be sprinting all the way through life. If you were to give your life a tempo number, 1 through 10, what would it be? Drop it in the comments right now. For some of us, we're at a stage in life where it's like a 3, or we don't have a lot going on. We occasionally have some place to go. Maybe someone comes and visits. We have a doctor's appointment. Now, others of us, we're like down at the 8 side where we're kind of running quick and getting kids here and there and everywhere. If you had to pick a number, what would it be? Go ahead and drop it in the comments. You see, while we all are living this tempo, the rhythms of our life, I don't know if you realize this, but they've been taken captive. Whether it's 1 or someplace all the way up to 10, you and I, the rhythms of our life, they have been taken captive. If we go back to the Industrial Revolution, going back in history a little bit, the Industrial Revolution began to reshape the Western culture, and when that happened, the dial, or the speed of life, has slowly been turned up faster and faster and faster. You and I, we now wake up in a hurried state. Like when we get out of bed, we wake up with hurried desires. We wake up with hurried desires to see more, to do more, to take more, to make more, to be more, to talk more, to post more, to tweet more. We want to go more, eat more, work more. And this desire that has kind of held us or holding us captive, it makes us move faster and faster in this hurried and then exhausted state of living. I mean, surely I'm not the only one. Surely I'm not the only one where it feels like you spend your day just running in a hamster wheel. And you get done at the end of your day and you fall into your bed and you wonder, what did I accomplish? We're exhausted. And the byproduct of this hurried life and this hurried sickness, this always going faster, is that you and I, we have weary souls. We have weary souls. And then the consumerism that is all around us, that drove us to the point of being hurried and exhausted, now is capitalizing on it. Emily and I, we are looking to replace our mattress. We've got this special mattress. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. It's called the Gully mattress. I don't know if you've heard of this brand or not, but the Gully mattress is where your mattress is old and you've slept on it a while, and so it has gullies on both sides. Maybe some of you have that mattress. And so it is time for us to replace this mattress, and I hopped online one day. I want to sleep well. Emily wants to sleep well. Right now it's not happening. We're not sleeping well. And so I jumped online and I began to research mattresses. And I researched mattresses that keep you cool at night because I get really hot when I sleep. And I researched mattresses that were long lasting because I don't want to be doing all this time. And all of these different filters, I ran it through. And you know what I walked away from? When I was hoping to walk away from this search feeling refreshed and excited about this new mattress that we were going to order or buy, I walked away just as overwhelmed and tired. I don't know if you've looked for a mattress lately, but do you realize how many different options you have with a mattress? I mean, there's traditional inner spring mattress. There's coiled mattresses. There's individually wrapped coiled mattresses. There's temperature controlled. There's memory foam. There's density foam. There's pillow top. There's hybrid, latex, adjustable air. That's just the mattress, let alone now all of the products that have been created to help us get more sleep because we're so hurried and exhausted. I mean, there's the blanket, there's the weighted blanket, there's the cooling system, there's the noise machine, there's the diffuser, there's the meditation and calming apps, there's the sleep mask, there's the blackout curtains, the melatonin, and we don't have time this morning to talk about the amount of pillows. We're exhausted. Our bodies are tired. Why? Because to be real honest, we are choosing, without even realizing it and just chalking it up to a part of life, we are choosing to live a life outside of God's design for the rhythm of rest. The rhythm of rest. We have fallen into the trap that has tripped up humanity since the very beginning by making the rhythm of rest the last priority. This idea of rest, or there's another name for it, Sabbath, it has been built into the world since the very beginning. I mean, the beginning of time, but laced in the DNA of God is the rhythm of rest. To help us understand how God has intricately designed this idea of rest, I want you to watch this video for just a minute to gain a better understanding of what God is doing with this rhythm.
The number 7 is a big deal in the Bible.
Yeah, in biblical Hebrew, the word 7 is connected to the idea of fullness or completeness.
And that's something we all long for, but don't often experience. Instead, we find ourselves working endlessly, fighting back chaos with no real rest.
Yes. Now keep all that in mind as we turn to Genesis 1 in the Bible. It begins with darkness and disorder, but then God speaks to bring about light and order so that life can flourish.
And this happens over the course of 6 days.
Each day is marked with the phrase, "There was evening and there was morning." But on the 7th day, something special happens.
God stops and rests.
Right. Creation is brought to its completion on the 7th day. And that phrase, "There was evening and there was morning," it doesn't appear on day 7.
It's like a day with no end.
On the seventh day, God's presence fills his creation. The land provides for all of God's creatures, including humans, who are appointed to rule the world with God forever.
Kings and queens of the seventh-day rest. I can get into that.
But the humans are deceived by a dark power, and they forfeit that rest. They're exiled into the wilderness, where they have to work as slaves to the land.
Until they die and return to the dust from which they came.
But God wants to restore humanity back to that seventh-day rest. So he chooses to give the family of Israel that experience of ultimate rest so they can share it with others.
But how? They're in Egypt, slaves to an oppressive empire who's grinding them into the dust.
So God confronts Egypt and he liberates the Israelites, taking them through the darkness and chaos on the way to the Promised Land.
Now, while they're on their way, they find themselves in the wilderness. It's easy to get lost. Life is a struggle. They're not in the land of rest yet.
But while they're on the way, God invites them in the wilderness to start living as if they're in the Promised Land.
But how do you practice the future rest in the wilderness?
Well, God tells them that every seventh day they are to stop their work, or in Hebrew, to Shabbat, so that they can rest and enjoy God's good world.
So take a whole day to live as if the ultimate rest has already come.
Yeah, this is the Sabbath, celebrated every week on the seventh day. But there's more. The Sabbath is just one of 7 festivals that Israel practiced every year, each one anticipating that seventh-day rest.
That is a lot of sevens.
And there's even more. Every 7 years, the Israelites were to liberate slaves, forgive debts, and let the land rest for a whole year. And then, every 7 times 7 years was the ultimate seventh-day rest, called the Year of Jubilee. If anyone had lost their land or gone into debt, all was forgiven, everything restored.
Wow, so the Sabbath, these feasts, the Year of Jubilee, it's all pointing towards the hope of future rest.
Right. Now, when the Israelites went into the land, they forgot their God, and so they forfeited their chance for rest in the Promised Land.
They're exiled and enslaved again by an oppressive nation, led back into a world of chaos and disorder.
But Israel's prophets said that their exile would end one day, and that the ultimate jubilee of freedom and rest would come, but generations go by, and they're still waiting.
It's at this dark point in the story that Jesus appears, and he launches his public mission on a Sabbath day.
Yeah, he read aloud from the scroll of Isaiah, saying that it was time for all captives and slaves to be released because this was the year of the Lord's favor.
What did he mean, this is the year of the Lord's favor?
He was talking about the ultimate jubilee.
So Jesus is claiming that seventh-day rest would come through him.
Right, he said that he was the Lord of the Sabbath, and he confronted disorder and darkness in all of its forms, liberating people from sickness, sin, even from death itself.
Yet, Jesus was killed, so even his work was undone.
Well, it seemed that way. But notice, Jesus timed his death to take place at the end of the week. His body rested in a tomb during the Sabbath, and on the 8th day, he rose from the dead.
Oh wait, the 8th day? You mean the first day of a new week?
Exactly. Jesus' resurrection was like the first day of a new creation, where God's light and life broke into the darkness.
So because of the resurrection, we have hope in God's promise of future rest. But we're not there yet. It's like we're still in the wilderness, where we experience struggle and pain.
But as we journey towards that ultimate seventh day, Jesus invites us to experience a taste of real rest now by following him. Or in his words, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest."
You see, God from the very beginning had a detailed and intricate design for the rhythm of rest in our lives because we need it. It's vital to us. You see, rest is an essential aspect of us following Jesus. That video ended with Jesus' words in Matthew chapter 11. It says, "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." I love the way that Eugene Peterson in The Message paraphrases these words. He writes it this way. He says, "Are you tired worn out, burned out on religion, come to me. Get away with me and you'll recover your life. I'll show you how to take a real rest. Walk with me and work with me. Watch how I do it. Learn the unforced rhythms of grace. I won't lay anything heavy or ill-fitting on you. Keep company with me and you'll learn to live freely and lightly. It just sounds right, doesn't it? It's like, yeah, that's what I want. Of course it does. Since from the very beginning, you and I, we are made in the image of God, the reflection of God. And so if we are reflecting God, that explains the deep down angst for inside of us to slow down and to rest. Dallas Willard, as he is talking about the condition of the heart, he says this: desire is infinite, partly because we are made by God, made for God, made to need God, and made to run on God. We are satisfied only by the one who is infinite, eternal, and able to supply all our need. We are only at home with God. When we fall away from God, the desire for infinite remains, but it is displaced upon things that will certainly lead to attention. If we were to be honest with one another this morning, there's many of us that we feel exhausted because we have not been finding rest in the things of God and God Himself. We have been living in the rhythm of self. We have displaced what should be an infinite desire for God to a desire to please self and try to fill this void. This desire for more that continues to claw at our lives. More attention, more money, more sex, more of my way, more workouts, more food, more worries, more kids, more games, more entertainment. And while desire snowballs, Sabbath stops it. You see, this is literally the translation of Sabbath, to stop. And so it shouldn't surprise us that Jesus doesn't just mention rest and what it means to live in the rhythm of rest with Him. It should not surprise us that the next two stories that Matthew records illustrate Jesus' desire for the rhythm of Sabbath in our life. When Matthew continues to write in Matthew chapter 12, he explains two different situations where Jesus, the first one is with His disciples, and they're walking through this grain field and they're hungry, and so they start picking some grain. There's some Pharisees, remember, like the religious hierarchy, who think they're better than everybody. They see this happening, and as Jesus and His disciples are walking, it is the day of rest. It was the Sabbath day, and as the disciples reach over and pick this grain to eat it, the Pharisees call them out and say, "What on earth are you doing?" Jesus confronts the Pharisees in that moment. He says, "You have no idea what the Sabbath is." The second story that Matthew records right after Jesus' invitation for rest is a man that is physically wounded. His hand, it says that it's shriveled. There's some sort of ailment to his hand that is causing difficulty in this man's life. Jesus walks over to the man and heals the man. The Pharisees accuse Jesus of working on the Sabbath and call Him out. And again, Jesus asks a question like, "Have you never read the Scriptures? Don't you know what it says?" And Jesus again calls out their misconception of what the Sabbath is. You see, The reason that Matthew conveys this is he is writing this record of Jesus' life, that right after Jesus says, "Come to me if you are weary, and I will give you rest." And then Matthew illustrates what this rest looks like, that it's not just taking a break one day a week. There is so much more. In other words, if you want to experience life with Jesus, you have to find time to rest like Jesus. John Comer, he maybe summarized it best when he said, "In the church, we love God, but we don't know how to sit with God." We love God. We just don't like or even know how to sit with God. And I think that's extremely true, right? We love the idea of worship. We love the idea of God. We love the idea of serving others. We love the idea of even reading the Bible. We love the idea of having someone that brings hope to our life. We love that God rescued us from our sin. But to sit and to rest, we don't know how to do that. You see, for Jesus, his Jewish audience, they would have understood Sabbath. They would have observed it regularly. However, the Pharisees abused it, which is why Jesus calls them out, because they have added so many layers to it. They've added so many layers that it's no longer about God, and now it's about the traditions of what they want. And here's what they were doing, is they were valuing traditions over people. When God's design is that rest is a rhythm to bring people to Him. You see, the sole design for a Sabbath is rest and worship. When we sit with God, we find contentment because He is enough when everything else isn't. And while uncomfortable at times, there is something divine about sitting in the quiet, in the calm, and in the still. Just this past week, Emily and I, we were in the car with the kids. We were over at a friend's house, and then we were in the car, and we were going home. We took the long way home, and we went and drove just kind of through some of the gravel roads. And we stopped at one point. We were about 1.5 miles off the highway, and it was, this past week was beautiful. And so it was still, it was calm, it was beautiful out. We rolled the windows down, and as I came to a stop, I turned the car off. And the kids are behind me, and they're like, "Dad, what are we doing? Dad, why are we out here? Dad?" And I said, "Stop. Just stop." And they were like, "Why? What are we supposed to stop from? Why are we out here?" And I said, "Do you hear that?" And they stopped and they listened for a minute. And then Jack goes, "Do we hear what?" And I said, "Exactly." I said, "Just listen to the calm around us." And we sat there for 10 or 15 minutes. And after a few minutes of sitting there in the quiet, Levi goes, "Dad, I could just fall asleep sitting out here." I said, "That's exactly the point." As we sat there, it was refreshing to hear crickets, to look up at the stars. It was calming to sit in the middle of creation and recognize that the divine wrapped all the way around us in the calm of that moment. Friends, here's our truth for this morning. The rhythm of rest is the antidote for our ragged soul. The rhythm of rest is the antidote for our ragged souls. In our rest, we make peace with a holy God. And the magnitude of the moments of rest in our life, they create life-giving moments for our hurried soul. This morning, how is your soul? Is it weary? Is it tired? It may be a better way for us to think about it. If you were to picture your soul right now being represented by the battery icon on your cell phone, what would it look like? Are you all the way full? You're loving life right now. Like you're at a good spot in life. Everything is good. My soul is healthy. I'm resting in God on a regular basis. The rhythm is built in to who I am. For some of us, it is maybe our battery sitting at like 75%. We're in the yellow. And we're like, yeah, I love God, and I'm just not great at sitting with Him, but I love to worship, and my soul's getting a little bit weak, though. It's time for a recharge. Maybe there's some of us that we look at our soul, and it is exhausted. It is weary. Because we've been choosing in our lives, we have been choosing to fill this infinite desire that God built in us with all of the things of the world, hoping that it will solve everything inside of us. And this desire, and our battery is like 10% low battery mode. How is your soul? You see, creation, the 7 days of creation would not have been complete without rest. Without a day of Sabbath, God's work would have been incomplete. And the same is true with His creation, you and me. Without rest in our lives, we are incomplete. As mentioned earlier in that video, when you look at the rhythm of Jesus, even when it took Jesus to the cross and He was crucified and He paid an unfair price for our mistakes, where Jesus went to a cross for you and me and paid the price for all of our sin and all of our shame. And when Jesus was put to death, His body rested on the Sabbath. And when Jesus rose to life, Jesus started a new week. He made time for the Sabbath because you and I were a priority of His life. You see, rhythm is the antidote for our ragged soul. It is the antidote for our weary soul, for our sinful soul, for our broken soul. Rest. Rest. It's where we make peace with a holy God. A couple of weeks ago, a lady walked into my office. And she said, "Do you have a few minutes to talk?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." And she walked over and she sat down in one of the chairs in my office. She kind of really fell into it. And I could tell just by looking on her face that she was exhausted. I said, "What's going on?" She began to paint a picture of her life. And as tears rolled down her face, it was exhaustion. It was disappointment. It was feeling overrun. It was tired. And in this season of life, she said, "I have no fight left." I knew that she's a person that loves standing alongside other people in the middle of their struggles and their trials. And so, as compassionate as I could, I just asked a very straightforward question. I said, "What good is it if you're helping everybody else but hurting yourself?" I said, "Eventually you're going to hit empty." And she looked back at me and she said, "Matt, I'm there. I'm there. I just can't do it anymore. And I know I'm supposed to care, but I just don't care." And we talked back and forth for the better part of a half hour, and I finally asked her. I said, if you could if you could go away for a couple of days, what would it look like? Like just by yourself, if you could go away for a couple of days, what would you do? And she said, I would read. And I would sit by water. And I would listen. And I would write. And I looked back at her and I said, then do it. And she kind of looked up and she looked right at me. And I said, why not? I said, right now, it's summertime, you have the ability to do that. I said, is your husband going to die, or are the kids not going to make it for a couple days? Is the house going to burn to the ground? And she said, I hope not. I said, then do it. I said, if you're helping everyone else, but never resting, then you're always going to be unhealthy. And in a matter of minutes of a couple of phone calls, she had a cabin lined up by a lake. She had a bag packed, ready to go. And she told no one where she was going. She found rest. I asked her, I said, if you could summarize what happened in those 3 days, how would you do it? And she said this: I walked away overwhelmed by God's presence, with a renewed perspective of God's power fighting through me, with a warrior focus to constantly fall before God, and a commitment to pursue things that make peace. See, the rhythm of rest is the antidote for our weary soul. To rest in God, to step into the rhythm of slowing our lives down, to make an intentional choice that in a world that wants to hurry faster and faster and faster, we will slow ourselves down and we will recognize that we are made in the image of a creator God, and He desires that we sit with Him. What did Jesus do the night before He went to the cross? He rested in the garden and He prayed. He didn't hurry and take care of 15 other things because He said, well, I know I got the cross tomorrow, and so I got to get all these things buttoned up. No. He sat in a garden and He ate. In humility. His rhythm. His rhythm of rest was the antidote for His weary soul. And it is the same for ours. This morning, some of us, we are ragged and we are weary because we're not taking time to rest in the presence of God. We are not making peace with the holy God. We're just filling our plate with more and more and more of the world's. Not bad things, just more. And maybe this morning, you recognize I can't be the follower of Jesus that I need to be if I'm too busy with everything else around me. Maybe for some of us this morning, we recognize that it's us, that we have a ragged and weary soul because we are just chasing after the things of this world. The more, trying to solve our problems with more of something, and it just leaves us empty. And maybe this morning, we say, yeah, that's me. And maybe we jump into the follow-up form right above this video and say, I've got some questions. Maybe this morning, we need to approach the most peaceful part of our time together. The meal of communion. And as we take a cracker and as we take some juice, we rest. We rest in the fact that Jesus rested his body in a grave to bring life to you and me. That on the Sabbath, Jesus was still so we could run into heaven. As we take the cracker and as we take the juice, we remember together what Jesus did for you and for me to pull us out of the brokenness of our lives. After we rest in this moment, don't rush it. Don't hurry it. After we rest in it, we'll continue in worship. We'll celebrate together what Jesus has done for us, but also what he's calling us to. That we rest because he is calling us to a broken world around us. Friends, in the hurried sickness of our world, rest is the antidote for our ragged soul.
All the poor and powerless, and all the lost and lonely, all the thieves will come confess and know that you are holy, and know that you are holy. Will sing out hallelujah, and we will cry out hallelujah. Shout it. Go on and scream it from the mountain. Go on and tell it to the masses that He is God. Shout it. Go on and scream it from the mountains. Go on and tell it to the masses that He is God. Shout it. Go on and scream it from the mountains. Go on and tell it to the masses that He is God. Yeah. And we will sing out hallelujah, and we will cry out hallelujah, and we will sing out hallelujah and shout. And we will sing out hallelujah, and we will cry out hallelujah. We will sing out hallelujah and shout. Yeah. Shout it. Go on and scream it from the mountain. Go on and tell it to the masses that He is God. Shout it. Go on and scream it from the mountains. Go on and tell it to the masses. He is God.
Wherever you're watching from this morning, I'm so glad that you have joined us for Crossroads Online. I'm thankful that you made this time specific for Jesus. But here's the challenge. It's not just this time that's for Jesus. It's the rest of our week. I want to challenge you this week to find some time and rest. Plan it. Rest in it. Plan out when it's going to be, a beginning time and an end time. Plan what you're going to do, which is not much. Sabbath is designed, to remember, for rest and worship. Spend some time in gratitude, just thanking God for anything that you can think of, that He is taking care of you. Don't say, well, I'm going to rest the whole week. Don't say, well, I'm going to rest this week, and it's called a nap. Listen, sleep is necessary, but a focus on Jesus is hard to do when you're asleep. This week, find a time and step into the rhythm of rest. If you're a guest, again, we would love to connect with you, learn a little bit more about you. We'd love for you to fill out the follow-up form. If you're a guest, it's the guest form. If maybe something this morning that we talked about, you said, yeah, that's me. I've got questions about that. I want to know more about Jesus. I want to give my life to Jesus in baptism. Then jump up above in the video, click on that follow-up form, and we would love to hear from you. As a church this week, wherever we're at, let us not just be Jesus people while we're right here. This next week, on our social media platforms, when we go to the grocery store, if we're in a restaurant, if we're spending time with family and friends, let us be Jesus people in everything that we do, because we are living in the rhythm of the Jesus that we are following.